join a little bit late. Julia, are you comfortable with us getting started? Take that as affirmative. All right.
I'll just officially call the meeting to order. Julia, if you could read roll call, that'd be great. Thank you.
I'd like to remind everyone that this meeting is being recorded. Please, let's have a roll call. Julia?
Kirk, do you want me to do it or do you want to do it?
I can do it.
Okay.
So is a representative from District 6 present? Is a representative from the Hill CDC present?
Present.
Thank you. Is a representative from the Hill District Federal Credit Union present? Is a representative from the Hill District Consensus Group present?
Yes.
Thank you. Is a representative from Wesley Center AME Zion present?
Present.
Thank you. A representative from Shenley Heights Community Development Program present? Is a representative from the Historic Hill Institute present?
Present.
Thank you, Kim. Is a representative from Ujima Collective present?
Yes.
Thank you, Lakeisha. Is a representative from the Office of State Representative Arion Abney present? Is a representative from the Office of County Executive Sarah Inamorado present? Is a representative from the Office of the Mayor present? Is a representative of the Pittsburgh Public School District present? And is the representative from Allegheny County Council present? Okay, thank you. It appears that we do have a quorum. Next, we're going to focus on old business, starting with Alerta update. Julia, you're on mute. Mute. Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone. So this is a LERTA financial report and a report on the URA administrative cost that we had billed for previously. So this update is for until September, the end of September of this year. The account balance is $7,327,842.57. The earned interest in September is a little over $25,000. The year to date is $295,570.87. And their projected future revenues include the Block E2 owner payment, the share of the parking revenues for the URA lots at $1 per car, which is an annual deposit. And then once the music venue is operating, the music venue ticket surcharge of $2 per ticket. Moving on to the URA staff hours, this is a breakdown of by year from for 2021 through 2024, which is the time we have billed for to date. So it just breaks down the hours worked by staff for each year and then the amount. Any questions?
I did have a question, Reverend Grace, and I think our goal was to reduce those hours for clarity. And I was just really amazed how much was logged in 2023. And I didn't get a sense if that was how many employees that entail, because I'm not sure what, and don't need to know what people make, but on our end, that's 159 was a pretty large amount, as well as even 24, 85,000. So I don't know if we have a projected goal with you on board, Kirk, of how we get that figure more palatable, that we would be able to use those funds to get to the community.
I can take a shot at responding, Rev, and then Julia, please chime in. I think, Rev, over the last couple advisory board meetings, we have discussed the administrative costs, and I think we all recognize inherently there is going to be a reduction because many of the tasks billed for to date, I will be able to fulfill. There are going to be some tasks moving forward as we create grant agreements, as we move to a setup where there may be some loans and some underwriting that may need to occur. There are going to be some administrative fees that and costs that we will uh, develop over time. But I do think that the expectation is within my role, the amount of work that the URA will have to put forth will be reduced greatly and more significantly as I'm in my role. Julia or Thomas or Sheila, is there anything else that you would want to add?
This is Tom. Not from my perspective. I think the way you've described it's fair.
So do we have a projected goal not to exceed? That's my question. Maybe I would hate to spend a lot of time on a $10,000 grant to a community person, and 3,000 of it is on top of that and is administrative costs from the URA. And so I want to call it double dip, and I just want to get a better sense of how we make sure those funds ideally get to the community versus the heaviness of the cost of the staff. So even though we're making decent from the interest, when I look at 85,000, which is a salary, it's like a full-time salary. So I guess that's where the kind of conflict comes with year 2023. That look like, even though you're already there, it looked like it represents just a lot of hours.
Yeah, I appreciate the question. I think it's fair. I would say that we'll work. I mean, I think we need to continue to work at that. I mean, to some degree, frankly, until we start. I mean, so as an example, with some of the programs which are new, right? And the initial cost might be slightly higher, but should ramp down over time, right? Like once a grant agreement is created, you don't need to keep recreating the same grant agreement, that type of thing. Hopefully the projection, the goal would be then to gain efficiencies once the various documents and these types of things are in place. But there could be an initial, cost that's, more that would be higher, but then it'll go down over time to, build those agreements and build those processes. I think some of that we'll have to continue to learn and project, but I think I understand your question, and something we'll work together with Kirk and the rest of the team here to think through that in a more specific way for your question.
Okay. I don't want to stretch it out, but I think we should work on an intentional ideal goal to not to exceed, and that we can kind of know where, still we'd like to get the money out. So I don't want to prolong it, but it's very glaring to me.
I'll just chime in a little bit. I hear you, and we think about that a lot here, and how we can continue to deliver for our clients while also making sure that we get more money out rather than incur overhead. And so the one good practice is to accept boilerplate documents and not entertain efforts to revise those and embark on, contract negotiations or grant agreement negotiations. So the template's the template, and you go with it, right? And so that's one really succinct way to just save on admin and legal.
Okay.
I did want to point to that same concern, because at the last meeting, I thought, agreed that only one staff person from the URA would attend meetings to minimize our costs.
Does anyone want to respond to that?
I mean, currently this is a group effort that we're supporting Kirk on. So, until that's not necessary, then, you know, I think that.
I think
We're here to support him.
at the last meeting, we agreed that we did not think it was necessary. In fact, I think the advisory committee specifically asked that the URA not have a full suite of staff members on these meetings because, right, just these meetings alone are 2 hours, and that's, you know, for 4 people, that is 8 hours of time that we are now having to pay for when somebody could probably just provide written minutes. So please, like, I want to make sure we respect the committee's request. And, you know, I think that Kirk being at the URA and then also having that staff person there, we really would like to just conserve that money for the community instead of incurring those administrative costs.
And I would like to first welcome the representative from Shenley Heights Community Development Program, Alicia George, to the meeting. And Alicia, I saw that your hand was up. Sorry, Rev, but I see Alicia had a hand up.
Oh, no, I might have a pen in my hand, not a hand. Sorry.
Sorry,
I'm
Rev.
making-
I'm
that's a
sorry.
note.
I'm sorry, Kirk. I just lowered it because Marimba just said it. Sorry
Okay.
about that. I was trying to lower real quick when I heard her say it because we did agree that we do not need all URA staff. You're quite competent and we have confidence in that. So, and that was our discussion. But she just hit it. So thank you, Marimba, and thanks, Kirk. Hello, everyone.
Thank you, Alicia. So I think we just continue to hear a theme of wanting to know what a target number for the administrative costs are. Over time, we're reducing that lift as I continue to build and fulfill within my role. Is there anything else, Tom, Shashida, or Julia, you would like to add to that? And I do think that this has been brought up the last couple of months, so we can just kind of work through our plan moving into 2026. Okay, are there any other questions from advisory board members? Okay. Thank you. So next, I just wanted to give an update on the funding guidelines. As we are all aware, we were able to formally present the guidelines in September 11th at the URA board meeting. And then earlier this month, Thursday, October 9th, we were unanimously approved by the URA board. Again, we continue to take positive steps forward, inching closer to actually getting monies out to benefit the community in many different ways. And so just elevating that we did get unanimous board approval. We also were able to get approved for the Jot Form license. And that license, just to recap, Jot Form is a platform that the URA uses to create their electronic applications, enabling me to have my own license, enables me to be able to update applications in real time. And we'll walk through the application for our first 3 guidelines. I was able to start working on that October 10th. And was able to work through it last week. And we do have an electronic application that's ready to go live Monday, October 27th. And we'll talk more about that. But that was approved and it was greatly appreciated and it is a tool that I've been able to pick up and learn. Thank you, Shashila, for joining. We also, at that URA board meeting, announced that applications would be live in late October. We didn't specify a specific date, not knowing how much time we had to work through the creation of the application, et cetera. But we did meet that target, so we will be live in late October. And we informed the board that applications would be open for a period of 6 months. So applications will be open and carry us through April of 2026. Any comments here? All right. And so, Julie, I think we are ready to move on to some new business. And the first line of new business to be discussed is the outreach plan, which I've kind of foreshadowed and which has evolved over the last few months. And I think now we're drilling down on some key dates. And so again, applications will be ready. Thank you, Richard. We just want to acknowledge we have a representative from the Hill District Federal Credit Union here on the call who just joined us, and I believe we now have all voting board members present. So again, this outreach plan is really aligned with once our applications go live, how do we get the information out to the community? How do we get it out to organizations? How do we get it out to businesses, et cetera? Knowing that a big piece of that is going to be relying on our advisory board network and other community networks to get that information out, but then also leaning into the URA and the existing tools that are there to be able to help us prepare some materials, et cetera. So I have here that applications are ready to be released with advisory board approval. The target date is of 10/27. That's Monday. Again, I'll walk through what the application looks like today. I think it's exactly how I had presented it a few months ago in writing, but today you'll actually see the flow electronically, and so that's exciting. And I'll skip down a couple bullet points. We are right now working on the creation of a one-pager detailing program. So there will be a one-page document that'll have a description of each guideline, children's, youth, and education, workforce development, and development program initiatives, and then a QR code to virtually access the applications. The way that I built the application is there is one home page. You'll then pick which guideline that you're interested in, and that'll take you to a separate flow of questions for each respective guideline. So it's easily accessible. I think that's something that I wanted to make sure was part of the application. It's not too word heavy, so we're not asking for 1,000-word descriptions within it. And again, there will be one QR code, excuse me, that a potential applicant will be able to access to be able to go within one of those three pathways. And what I wanted to also talk to the advisory board about today was a potential community engagement expense approval that would extend through my contract, which ends in April of 2027. Added amount of 3,000 just to be safe. That would support outreach events, marketing materials, if there needed to be an acquisition of space, if there needed to be some minor refreshments, that would enable me to be able to have that budget to be able to use. I want to jump back up a couple bullet points really quickly. And so I have been planning on a combination of virtual information sessions, office hours, and then in-person information sessions. And I've had to change some of the dates just based off of our readiness to go live with the application, and then also on the availability of communal spaces. I've been focusing primarily on the Carnegie Library Hill District branch, as that has been a place where I've been able to do some work out of. And so what I'm proposing here is the application goes live on the 27th. There will be I'm proposing, so as we communicate that the applications have gone live, we will be able to invite interested parties to learn more about the application process, about the guidelines, by hosting an evening information session. I think that's Thursday, October 30th. That Saturday, I would also host a virtual information session. We would communicate this to community members via flyer. They would either have a registration link, and we're working through this in real time right now, or just my information to be able to reach out and register. And then that would be a way for people to virtually be able to get information on all three of the different guidelines and how to apply. And I would be able to answer any questions individuals may have. I also have already set up and reserved space in the small meeting room at the Carnegie Library Pittsburgh Hill District branch, where I would host office hours by appointment or open office hours. I'm open to what you guys are thinking, but I think by appointment might make more sense because the response might be significant. But that would be Monday, November 3rd, and then Wednesday during the afternoon, Monday, November 3rd, and then Wednesday, November 5th, it would be in the evening. And again, those spaces have been reserved. The first in-person information session would be Saturday, November 8th. That's only because the August Wilson Room is not available on Saturday, November 1st, but that space has been booked. And that is a plan that just gets us a little in front of holiday season. And we'll continue to do this in December, January, et cetera. But I think this is kind of where I'm at, and I would love any additional feedback on how we start to roll this out within just a few days. So I want to pause here. Any thoughts on the outreach plan? Any additional suggestions? Any questions about the community engagement expense approval? Again, if the advisory board is in support of that, it will be great to entertain a motion and get those monies approved at the next URA board meeting. I will stop talking and leave this open for comment.
How are we getting the word out about the applications? Is there a marketing strategy, or you're depending on word of mouth, or?
So that's what I was trying to, I guess, poorly articulate here, Richard, but we will have a flyer that we'll be able to get around into the community, so that there will be heavy flyering. We will be dependent and asking advisory board members and other community partners that have a following to be able to advertise this on social media, to be able to get the information out electronically in that way. Richard, a lot of this is also going to be some legwork. So me intentionally going to, community organizations that serve children, youth, and family, for example, being able to reach back out to individuals who have already reached out to me and who are awaiting for the applications to go live. So I think it's going to be a mix of working with community partners that are outside of this advisory board, working very closely with this advisory board, but then doing some direct flyering and outreach. And then hopefully, having these information sessions, open office hours, et cetera, will also help with that engagement.
So for me, as bad as I want to get it out, it just feels really tight, like you would need at least another week. It's just like you're running right into Halloween functions and on the 31st, the 30th. And so I'm not against it, but it just feels so tight. I'm ready for it to get out there, but it's like boom, now boom. So I don't know. If you feel no, it's not a deal breaker, but I just think just to get all that going, it feels too tight
Okay.
for this week almost. In terms of the $3,000, I have no issue. My question was, you said you had to go back to the URA to get approval of those $3,000.
Well, it's just following. Thank you, Rev. First of all, it's just following the process. So once the advisory board approves that, the formality is that the URA would then approve the release of funds.
So on any whether it's $1 or 30,000, it's got to go back to them for final approval.
That is my understanding. Alex, would you like to jump in?
Yeah, that's correct. So under policies and procedures and our escrow agreement with Zions National Bank, any expenditure of these funds needs final approval by the URA board.
And then Rev, to your point, maybe we start with the virtual information session that Saturday, and then I start to add other ones and other in-person the week before Thanksgiving. I get your point, and it's kind of that balance, right? We know we need to get the word out. We don't want it to be too rushed. I have proactively been working on a presentation that'll be able to get, the details for how people will apply. So I feel comfortable there. But maybe I won't force that Thursday, because that is the day before Halloween, and I'll just add some other opportunities after, and I could send that out to the group. But
That's just one opinion. I'm not married or locked into a deal
it
breaker.
makes sense. Yeah, it makes sense.
Feels tight. Just feels now it feels rushed.
Okay.
I didn't see where to raise my hand, so I was looking at the bottom.
Okay.
So we're all representatives of different organizations, so we can definitely get the word out electronically. And we could do that, as soon as tomorrow. And also, Kirk, I love that it's actually in the August Wilson room, that the discussion is going to take place. However, can you talk to Tanika? Because I would say for the first day that you're going to be in the Carnegie Library,
Mm-hmm.
to sit actually out in the front where people come in. With the First Source Center, we used to partner with the URA to advertise literally like the growth fund, and well, not the growth fund, sorry, the LERTA monies and the First Source Center, because people just didn't really know, who we were and, what we were doing, and just kind of telling them, yes, there's jobs available. And by the way, there's also monies for you, et cetera, et cetera. So I do think that kind of flag waving and having like that presence up front first would be great. And then maybe, putting up some different, I guess, do you have any money from, do you have any money for marketing?
That,
Um,
that's kind of what the expense approval is for, but I get your question because it has to get formally approved. And so I'm hoping that we'll be able to backfill any expenses that we currently incur because we are creating marketing materials right now, Kim. And obviously we would want to print those and get those out.
okay. Yeah. So I would just say definitely for your first day at, the library, just sit up front and, and have your URA banner, and if we later on can get like a Greater Hill District Neighborhood Reinvestment Fund
Yep.
table, that would be great, tabletop or whatever, that would be great. But yeah, because otherwise people aren't really going to know, that like that you're back there, that how it is. That's just how it goes.
Thank you,
So
Kim.
yeah.
That's a great suggestion. Thank you. Um,
And quickly on that same note, I know that the library has their little sandwich board that they put in the front. And maybe on the days that you are there, you can ask them if they can include you on that thing, so that people, driving by, walking by are like, oh yeah, that's right. Let me go in there and get it.
Thank you, Lakeisha. It's a great suggestion. I was just there today for most of my day, so I know exactly what you're talking about.
And
Um,
sorry, what's the first day that you're going to be at the Carnegie
so,
Library?
so Kim, I proposed the dates that you see there. I think there's going to have to be maybe some adjustment. Office hours, I want to keep those, so that would be starting November 3rd, that Monday.
Okay, yeah, I was just a little okay. All right, so Monday, November 3rd, from 10 to 2,
Yep.
and then the 5th. Okay, so I mean, if all of us representing our different organizations could make sure that everybody knows about, because November 3rd isn't too soon, so that's really great. So if we could just push that out, and let everybody know. I think that that's important, because Tanika did report back to this group before, and she was saying that people did definitely have questions. They definitely talked to her about the Greater Hill District Neighborhood Reinvestment Fund, and not just for the housing, but for everything. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
That's like our homework, is to make sure that people know that you're going to be at the Carnegie Library November 3rd from 10 to 2 for starters, and then obviously from at November 5th.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. And if you could just maybe send a follow-up email
Yep.
in that regard. Thank you.
You're welcome, Kim. Thank you. Alicia, I see that your hand is raised.
Yes, Kirk, I was just going to say, based on the past, our people will get the word at different times, and these applications will be available until April, correct?
Right.
So I think we should also be looking at holding different info sessions, which is what happened and what was best in the past, because people aren't going to find out the day that we release it, let's face it, or
Right.
they may not be able to get there. So we should be looking at some extra dates in 2026.
Absolutely.
Maybe even if we do one a month and get the word out, that'll be great technical assistance that, we were able to provide in the past. I think we need again.
Thank you, Alicia. And again, and noted, and I just propose these dates as like an immediate short-term outreach strategy. We definitely need recurring office hours. So once people find out, they can expect me to be certain places at certain times. And I think now is the appropriate time to roll that out. So I'll make sure that is brought to fruition. Thank you. Where we're getting, and I have to be conscious of time because I don't want to keep anyone over too late. And we know we have this executive session in about 24 minutes. So I want to see if there's any pressing comments or anything else that someone wants to speak on? And then if not, if someone felt comfortable enough to make a motion to approve the community engagement expense, that would help us move past that line item.
In reference to the expense, I'm sorry, I think it should be, we should get the right amount versus saying 3 and then going back and needing 5, because we got to get approval. So I just don't want to back to, would that be enough to cover material and, light refreshments? I'd rather get if we're going to go to them for approval of a figure, it should be the right figure that we're not going back
I hear
every
you.
month. So I just think 3 is not appropriate for what we hope to see happen in the next few months. So my addendum to be at least a budget of 10 with accountability, but you don't have to at least spend it, but at least not to go back to say I need 3 more.
Understood. I support that. Would someone want to make that motion?
I would put that in a motion that we would go back to allow a $10,000 budget for materials and whatever we need to get this kicking and going. That's my recommendation. That's my motion. Sorry.
Is there a
I
second?
second. Yep. This is Lakeisha. I second that.
Thank you, Lakeisha. I'm trying to work on my Robert's Rules of Order. So move.
Probably moved in second, ready for the question.
Question.
Then go all in favor.
Aye.
Opposers have the same.
Aye.
Aye.
And no.
Thank you. So moved. Approved.
Well, just say opposers have the same right. We have a record if someone says no.
Okay. Is anyone opposed?
Thank you.
And abstentions.
And abstention.
Okay.
So moved. Like we're good.
So moved. Thank you. And I'll work on that.
One more thing, Kirk.
Yes.
Can you put out a press release and just make sure that the press picks up on this and they can help spread the word?
Yes. Julia, are you still here? I believe we are working on something to that end. Kim, Julia, are you still on the call?
Yes, I'm here. Yeah, we will definitely make sure these the guidelines are posted on the URA website and shared with the media. And I know Kirk has already had a few media inquiries about this, so we can work to release a press release for sure.
Thank you. So Julie, I wanted to move on. Thank you, everyone. I wanted to move on to the next 2 pieces. So one is just walking through this reinvestment fund application. And then there are some other important pieces that I at least wanted to be able to touch on. And so I'm going to share my screen and hope that this works today. And it did. And so are you all able to see my screen? And
Yes.
Yes.
okay, so what you'll see here, and we still need to add logos, et cetera, but this is how the application is going to look electronically. And so once individuals are able to access the application via website, via flyer, via email, they first will have a welcome page, which just talks about, and again, this is the same text that I shared a few months ago, but just so you guys see, and I don't have to read through it, but talks about what the reinvestment fund is, what it supports, how it aligns with the Greater Hill District Master Plan and the Community Collaboration and Implementation Plan. Has some language there just related to applicants either being based in or serving or directly benefiting residents of the Greater Hill District, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a good way to kind of lay a lay of the land of what the reinvestment fund is, and everyone applying will be able to see this. The next page, and I'm gonna go through this in totality. I'll try to explain how it'll break down in real time. But the next screen is a screen that all potential applicants will see. So it'll ask what initiative the applicants are interested in. Again, we have 3 guidelines that have been approved. There will be hyperlinks on this page where they'll be able to click on development program initiatives or workforce development, et cetera, and it'll pull up the guidelines just in case anyone needed to cross-reference. But they will be asked to select one of the 3 guidelines. Once they select one, then there will be a series of questions related to that guideline. Once they finish the final question, they will get an email and informing them that their application was received. And so again, we're just talking through this. So if someone clicks on development program initiatives, they are going to now start going through. This is the very next screen that they'll see. So it asks for the organization entity name, email, contact information, et cetera, tax ID, EIN number. They'll then be asked to give a project title. This is all related to a project overview. The project location, so address and neighborhood, of course, it's going to be the Greater Hill District, but they may want to get a little more granular in detail, maybe the Middle Hill, maybe Crawford Roberts, et cetera. We'll then ask for them to check all that apply related to their project. So is it a residential new construction? Is it rehabilitation, et cetera? And then we'll ask, and again, the goal here was not to overburden applicants, but to also be able to get key information. So this is going to be related to an executive summary. So can we get a summary of your project scope and goals, how it aligns, 500 words max. We want to know what the total project cost is, the amount of secured and committed funding, what the funding gap is. So, you know, where are they on the project to get fully funded, and then what is their grant amount? And we just continue to stress per the guidelines what the maximum amounts are, et cetera. There is a readiness documentation, and you'll see later for the development program initiatives, there's another opportunity to add documentation. We just want to over communicate the documentation that is needed as part of this application. So site control documentation, building permits, et cetera. Sorry to run through this so fast, guys. I just want to make sure we're able to touch on some other topics. The eligible activity, so describing how the funds will be used, they'll be able to click on those. There's a checkbox so that they understand their compliance and commitments. They will be able to express the community benefit and alignment of the project in 500 words or less. They'll be able to talk about, so one is how does the project align with the CSIP, the master plan, et cetera. The other will be what is the expected community benefit? So is it a commercial space? Is it housing, et cetera? And then we have just one, if it is a residential development, asking them to describe any affordability requirements that may be included. This is just another over communication of an attachment checklist. So we need to make sure we have the things that speak to project readiness, but we also need insurance certificates, et cetera. And then this last page, they will authorize that this information is true and correct to the best of their knowledge. Once they hit that yes, application is over, they get a screen that thanks them for their application. They get an email with a summary of the application. We get an email with the summary of the application, and that's how that flows. Now, going back up to this page that everyone sees, if it's children's, youth, and education, they'll click on that. Of course, it's going to bypass everything related to development program initiatives. They won't even see it. The next thing that they'll see is the information for children's, youth, and education. Again, this is consistent with what I've shared over the last few months. It's just a little bit nuanced because we're likely to be working with 501c3s or individuals who have fiscal sponsorship. So you'll see on this first slide there's a line item there for, a text box there to enter any fiscal sponsors. Again, guys, for the sake of time, I'm just kind of going to flow through here. They'll be able to offer exec summary, again, 500 words max, about how this program supports children and youth in the Greater Hill. Because this is children, youth, and education focused, we really want to drill down into what are the objectives and goals, what are the activities and services and potential partnerships that are part of this project, what are the outcomes. It's not only important for us to be able to measure these applications, but it's also going to be important for storytelling, for us to really speak to the efficacy of the dollars that we've been able to contribute to organizations and the work that they've done. We want people to speak to, what is the intended community impact, and then they'll have a budget summary where they'll be able to enter various categories, amounts, equaling a total of up to 25,000 max, and then a budget narrative. So this is consistent with, anyone who applies for nonprofit related grants. Again, there's going to be an attachment checklist. There will need to be a certificate of insurance. Letters of support for potential partners is always great. Understanding project timelines, et cetera. And so that would be for the children's, youth, and education. Again, once they authorize, they get the email, they get the screen page thanking them for their application, so on and so forth. And then going back to that top screen, if they click workforce development initiatives, then they have a range of questions related to the guidelines of workforce development. And so they'll be able to describe their project. They'll be able to talk about the target population they are serving. Again, provide an executive summary, which is not overburdensome, objectives and goals, outcomes, project description, community impact, budget summary, budget narrative, checklist, authorization. So I'm gonna stop there. Julia, I don't know if you want to reshare your screen. While we are resharing, are there just some quick thoughts about that? Again, nothing has changed from the uh, the wording that I have presented to the group. The only difference is now you'll be able to see what it looks like in an electronic form.
One thing I would ask, and I saw that they would have to demonstrate proof of a 501c3. Does that include a listing of their board of directors as a part of that proof?
It doesn't explicitly ask for that. Is that something that you?
I think that should be a part of it, so that you'll be able to see, their viability and things like that.
Okay.
I'd like to respond to that. I'm a 501c3 and I've never had to submit historically my board. If you're a certified 501c3, I'm just not sure why we would, especially for our community, why we have to then add more layers of work
Well, it's just a part of the proof, and every grant submission I've ever made, I've had to include a listing of our board of directors. I'm
Okay,
just
well,
putting it out there.
it's something that I'll look at. I hear you, Rev, and I'll make sure I examine and look at what the best practice is. But thank you for the suggestion, Richard. And we'll make sure to make the appropriate decision there. Kim, I see that your hand is raised.
Yeah, so the application that you just went through was for the children's and like families programming.
Nope, it was all three of them at once, Kim.
Yeah. No, I saw it. I mean, I'm just talking about, okay, yeah. So I guess I was wondering why the like children's activities, why does someone have to be a 501c3? That's number one. And two, the certificate of insurance, if they don't have, because they may not have something like that. So will the application still go through if they don't have it, but they can be told or coached or something like that in terms of like, this is what you would need?
Okay, so I'm gonna try to respond to it and then ask for Julia and Alex to speak from a URA standpoint. But Kim, I think so. We want to make sure that the application process for the reinvestment fund is aligned with standard best practices, right? And so applying for program support for activities that engage youth and families, et cetera, it is customary to have one of two options, right? So either that applicant inherently has a 501c3 or equally as common that they have fiscal sponsorship. And so if someone does not have a 501c3, they will be encouraged to have a fiscal sponsor. And what we agreed to a few months back at the recommendation of, I believe, Marimba, was to make sure just because someone is a fiscal sponsor for an idea, which could have tremendous benefit and impact for the Greater Hill District, that wouldn't stop that organization who decides to be a fiscal sponsor for someone else from being able to apply for themselves, so that there isn't any reluctance for someone to be a fiscal sponsor. And that's pretty, common, as you know, Kim, that's a pretty common practice for someone who doesn't have their own 501c3 to then partner with the organization who would be a fiscal sponsor. Just really quickly, Julia and Alex, if there's any additional information related to these being public dollars and the level of audit that we may receive, I would love for that to also be added to the discussion.
Yeah, I mean, Kirk, to speak to the insurance question, one, it is best practice. And generally, if there are multiple employees, they're required to have workers' compensation insurance by law. And especially childcare providers have a whole host of liabilities. And I'm not familiar with like the licensing requirements or if if those insurance policies are, required for licensing, but I wouldn't be surprised if they are. But it's also there's a lot of liability that's associated with daycare and childcare facilities, and this kind of protects the URA, the reinvestment fund. So it is best practice for us to require that, and throughout every URA program we always require evidence of insurance.
So real quick, I'm just thinking of one thing I was thinking about is the I Am So Healed block party. So if you're having a block party and it's not strictly for children, but children are going to be involved, I know that they are a 501c3. Would they be required to have the certificates and do this type of the application I get, but yeah, would they be required to have the certificate, or would that be a different type of situation?
Are you asking about a block party as it relates to childcare services?
Yes. Yeah.
That seems like apples and oranges to me.
Yeah, it might be. I'm just trying
Yeah,
to,
that seems like apples and oranges. Maybe you go to your council person or try to find funds elsewhere.
Well, no. I mean, I think that they so if you're.
That's a different situation, Kim.
Okay. I just wanted some clarity on it. Okay.
Thank you, Councilman. I want to recognize Councilman Lavelle for also joining the discussion.
But it
I
seems
I
like.
just want to jump in a little.
Okay,
I
it
think
seems
that
like, oh, sorry. Go ahead, Miranda.
that's okay. I do want to encourage us to encourage collaboration in season, and perhaps what we can do is to provide a list of organizations who are willing to serve as fiscal sponsors to as a part of the application process. And that way people can reach out to organizations who are willing to serve as a fiscal sponsor. Because if you don't do this work on a regular basis, that can be a frustration and make you feel as though, you've been excluded. And we certainly don't want anybody to feel that way. But I think that, standard practice with regard to dispensing capital into the community is probably in our best interest, particularly in our first effort to get funds out. So I just wanted to kind of pitch in there that maybe the way we reduce that potential barrier is just by providing a list of organizations who are willing to be the fiscal sponsor.
Thank you, Marimba. Great point. Noted, and we'll make that happen.
Yeah, especially when you have an event such as a block party, it wouldn't be cost effective for an organization that's doing that maybe does it once a year to carry insurance all year round. So it would be beneficial to them if they had a fiscal sponsor to for the grant money to run through, which would it will satisfy the insurance requirement.
Right. And thank you, Richard. And I think to Councilman Lavelle's point, it's a different process. And so I'll make sure, because I've dealt with some of that before. So I'll just reach out and make sure I have a full understanding of what that would look like in terms of that type of context. But I think it is a good point to bring up. If you guys will allow me, I would like to make space for maybe one more comment, and then I do want to move to at least one more portion of today's agenda to at least have some input and conversation about before we move into executive session. So is there, Lakeisha, or maybe that was Marimba, I didn't want to cut anyone off who was just about to ask a question. So is there anyone else or that has a comment or a question? Okay. Thank you, guys. I'm sorry to rush this along. You guys do all have a copy of this presentation. Please reach out to me, email or phone, if there are additional questions, and I'm happy to respond right away and set up some time to discuss further. And so I would like to move to the next, and we're only going to get through this discussion here, and it is worth spending some time on. I think we got started a few minutes late, so if we can at least spend some time having some input on this, I think this will be critical. And so next slide, I think at our last, sorry guys, advisory board meeting in September, it was recommended that there would be a scoring panel to evaluate applications prior to submitting to the advisory board for a vote. This had been recommendations that I had heard early on within my position, and it came to fruition as multiple members expressed this within our meeting last month. And I think the spirit in which this was expressed was it's a best practice sometimes when working with public money. I was able to do some research on this. So there are these type of arrangements with different dollars that go out, even foundations, where there often is a smaller type of scoring panel that'll use a universal tool that has been agreed to by an advisory board. But this panel will be independent in many respects. We'll be able to use that tool to be able to score applications and just to continue to contribute to objectivity within the process, right? And making sure that everyone is being evaluated equally, fairly, and objectively within this process. So this is not unique to the reinvestment fund, although I think it was a great suggestion that again came from multiple members. And so there was a discussion briefly at our board meeting, which touched upon a few things. There seemed to be a general consensus or agreement around keeping the panel small, whether that is 3 people or 5 people can be determined, or 4 people. But there was some consensus around there. There seemed to be some interest in identifying parties that would be seen as neutral and objective, while identifying parties that have some subject matter expertise and or some knowledge of the Hill District. The process would be that there would be a panel that would score applications along with the program manager. Those scores would be compiled by the program manager, and then that program manager makes recommendations based off those scores to the advisory board, who then has the ultimate authority to vote to approve those applications which have been scored in a manner that they were then subsequently approved to the board. There were some things that need to be considered. I've had multiple conversations, both as committees, both as individuals, about does this panel need to be in place before applications are scored? And it's resoundingly been yes. People do not want different people's scoring and approving applications in 1 month and then a whole set of different people another month, again, to add to the transparency, to add to the objectiveness and fidelity of the process. So there also has been conversation about whether or not the panel members need to be independent of the advisory board. Again, to the point about best practice, having folks who aren't necessarily directly connected to any community entity, not necessarily directly connected to the community advisory board. Next slide. And so within that, there has been some conversation, and this is in no way every thought around this topic, but based off the conversations I've had, there does seem to be some commonality around a panel composition that is either 3 members or 5 members, again, which would include the project manager and 2 at-large reps or 4 at-large reps. Before I move forward, there also has been suggestions around, is there someone who would monitor the process? And we would have to define what that is. But, do they see the applications that were scored and the scoring sheets of the people who are scoring? And one of our committee meetings recently, there was a suggestion about a 4-person panel that would be a mixture of a program manager, a subject matter expert, and potentially advisory board members. And so what I want us to do today is just think about what the scoring panel looks like, and use this time today as input. And we don't have a lot of it, but I want to create this space because I think this is now one of our more important decisions to make as we can continue to move forward to actually getting money out to the benefit of the community. So I do think that the advisory board should make a vote at some point, whether that's next week via email, because if we need this panel in place to start scoring applications, we have to get this structure agreed upon. And that initial vote, for my recommendation and my perspective, again, it's going to be driven by your input today, is it would be voted, we would vote on the structure. Following a vote on the agreed to structure, then who would fill those recommendations of at-large members or others would then be determined by the advisory board. And so this is a conversation that is, again, very important that I want to be able to continue. This was probably going to be one of our first moments really engaging over email as an advisory board so that we can get to a level of vote soon. But this is probably the most important piece of the agenda today. And again, sorry, we just ran up against time. So I want to,
Okay, question.
yes.
What mechanism will you use, or what mechanism can we use to determine who the at-large scoring panel people are? How will we go about, getting those folks if they're not a part of this advisory committee?
So my initial thought, Richard, would be there would be recommendations that could be made on people from the board for people who they think would be able to serve in this capacity, that have some level of experience, expertise, et cetera, that would support their ability to serve, and just to be able to take those recommendations in, and then have the board be able to decide, who those members would be. I have thought a lot about this, a lot, over the last couple of weeks. And I think, one, the people we may determine as the perfect fit ultimately may not agree to even serve as a panelist. And so I think we probably want to come up with a short list of multiple people to hopefully get to 2 or 4 or what have you. But that's just my initial thought, Richard, and I'm open to any suggestions anyone has.
So I guess we would have to, since there's no one, maybe we could, put the charge on everyone to come up with a name or two that they would recommend to be a at-large representative on the scoring panel for the whole committee to take in consideration. Because it will take quite a while for you to screen that many people or that many choices, or there may be people that are not in your sphere of influence, or that that committee members know that may fit very well in the effort,
Right. Point very well taken, Richard, and we need to leverage the sphere of influence of committee members to be able to, or excuse me, advisory board members to be able to think through the possibilities. Alicia, I see that your hand is raised.
Yes, thanks, Kirk, for your initial. I agree with it. From my perspective, each of us would think of some people, and instead of giving you a list of unconfirmed, speak with those people first to see if they would be willing to commit. And we're asking them just to commit for this round
Yes.
only. We're not asking them to be on the next round of applications. It would just be for this one, correct?
Right, not in perpetuity, but just for this first 6 months that have been approved. Yes.
Right. And therefore, the list we give or present really will consist of people who have said yes to this effort instead of sending you on a wild goose chase trying to figure out who actually would do it.
Correct.
So I think it really boils down to each of us playing and taking a part in this effort.
So sorry, go ahead.
Lakeisha?
Yeah.
Yeah. So a couple of things come to mind. And I think, I like Alicia's suggestion. And I've sat on a couple of grant panels and have scored things for some foundations and arts work. I think that we would need to, in order to approach people about the opportunity, right, really have something concrete, on paper so that
Okay.
it's clear about what the commitment is. And are we asking people to, so when we say for this round, are we saying, okay, Because so in my experience, it may be people, you have a deadline, right, for when all of the grants are in, and I'm assuming that we're talking about having a list of people for each of those different categories, right? Those 3 different categories of grant opportunities that are available, correct? So we'd be looking at like different teams of people on each of those subjects, right? So one for children, youth, and families, one for community development, right? So there'd sort of be 3 groups of people, or are we saying one group of people is looking at all of the applications? So that's one question. And then
Okay.
are we asking these people to usually what happens is, right, you have your deadline of when the applications are in, and then those individuals would have the opportunity to review ahead of the meeting, right? So you would send them, right, you have them sign something, right, confidentiality, blah, 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 whatever. And then they would review the items, and then you'd meet in person, right, to have the conversations about it, right? And then kind of go through a scoring process. So they may do an initial scoring process, and then you'd come together, have a conversation, and kind of do a second round plus conversations and like rationale in order to then bring that final grouping to the advisory board. So that's what my thought is, or kind of questions around process. And then the last thing would be, are we asking them to do this as a volunteer situation, or are we giving people a stipend for the amount of time and dedication and detail it takes to go through and do this work?
Thank you, Lakeisha. 3 great and pointed questions, and I'll try to answer them in reverse the best I can. So this is thought as of a volunteer opportunity. We haven't had any discussion around any stipends that would be provided. So right now, that's the thought. 2, I definitely hear your best practice in terms of scoring and coming together meeting. There also could be a model that, and I've been a part of this model before, where the applications are sent to the people who have agreed to be scoring panelists via email, what have you, and they're given a certain amount of time to be able to score those applications, and then those scores are just kind of taken in and compounded. So maybe missing that step of having a discussion, but still independently scored. And I think it's up to us to decide, what's the best process. I think maybe best case scenario, there would be able to have that convening and discussion. But for the sake of, maybe, moving some of these applications through, I think we would have to determine whether that's a necessity. And then to the first question you posed, I think it's a similar response from my purview. It's going to be just the practical part of it. I think it'll be more difficult identifying 6 if we do a different set for each guideline. Now we're talking about 12 if we do a different set and it's a 5-panel guideline. And I think it's just the feasibility of being able to get the commitment, knowing that, again, that the idea is that this would be volunteer. And then also just elevating that the applications are open for a 6-month period, but we are accepting applications on a rolling basis, which is important because we are going to get development. I'll just use that as an example, program initiative applications in where their need to get those funds, should they be approved, is going to be tomorrow, right? And so we will need to have some level of monthly review. That we may get an application related to children, youth, and education for a program that they want to implement starting in January, just hypothetically speaking, right? Then so that's why we need to have at least a monthly review process that has a deadline of when we receive those applications. So if we get applications by the second week of a month, those ones that we've received will then go out to be scored. But I think it needs to be fluid so that we meet the need. That's a whole lot there, but that's the way I wanted to respond to that. Rev.
Well, I concur with you in terms of the rolling, that potentially this group will work potentially every month or every 6 weeks as they roll out. Secondly, I agree that they should be volunteers. I know that's hard to say, but I agree. Thirdly, I had a question in terms of there's definitely, I believe that you should be part of as a project manager of the number of this 3 or 5. Oh, lastly, I move that we don't exceed more than 5 and use the same 3 people or 5 people. And my other question was, of the 3 or 5, would one of them have to be a representative from the URA? That would help me help me vote on 3 versus 5.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Rev. Again, just to be fully transparent, we've had discussions individually, collectively, as a committee, and the inclusion of a URA representative as part of that 3 or 5 has been something that the advisory board has expressed is not intended to be a part of the composition. So this would exclude a URA representative. So it would be the project manager and then either 2 other folks or a project manager and either 4 other folks. But those 2 or 4 other folks will not, one of them will not be a representative from the URA.
And that would help me move more towards 3 PU and 2 others versus potentially 5. I'm open up either way, but if it was mandated, it would be you and a URA person, then I would definitely move for 5.
Understood.
So those are my comments.
I
Thank you.
agree. I agree wholeheartedly with what Rev is saying there. Because the URA, they have enough control as it is. I mean, you know, if we can do as much as we can on our own based on us, you know, that'll give us it'll also give the community a better sense of that it's us helping us, you know.
Yep.
And also, as discussed, it would lessen the administrative cost of the URA.
Yeah.
Yep. Great point. So I want to first,
Are
again,
we in executive session or are we?
we're about to get into it.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Because I know I've gone over.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to keep
Yep.
track.
So I just wanted to make sure this is a conversation that needs to continue. And what I'll do is facilitate our first, at least with me in this position, foray into having this discussion over email, to continue to ask questions, to have responses. And then what I think is needed to keep us on track and keep us on a timeline is to be able to facilitate an email vote and have people express, what composition they would prefer. And then that'll help us, right on the heels of that, start to get some recommendations. If you guys are comfortable with that, and I know that there are other comments and that's needed, but if you're comfortable moving the continuation of the discussion online, we can then move to executive session just out of respect for everyone's time.
For us to go forward and to some extent, should we settle on the 3 or the 5 at this point?
That's what I was going to say, because we really need to nail that in order to get recommendations to you, Kirk, and at least meet these deadlines that you presented to us.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
This is Daniel. My recommendation would be to use 3 as opposed to 5. I would also say that it seems implied, but I think it needs to be said out loud, that no one on the advisory board should be on the scoring committee.
That's right.
Agreed.
So I think we can put in a motion that it could be a motion. I move that we have 3 people on this board, you being one of them, Kirk, as a project manager, and the other 2, none would be from the URA or from the advisory board. That's my motion.
Second. Third.
4.
Is there any?
I just have a clarifying question.
Okay.
Because I know we also said that we wanted there to be some subject matter expert or expertise amongst those folks. Will having Kirk plus the other 2 people satisfy what we would need for these 3 categories, right? Because we could change something later on, right, if we feel like it doesn't work for the next round. But would it satisfy that consideration that was put out there?
Well, we would have to approve the 2 on this level, right? With the additional, the committee, the approval committee, we would have to sort of like look at their qualifications and give a thumbs up or down on the person that is presented by Kirk. So,
Correct, Richard.
Also, the scoring matrix that we have is not always, from what I saw, requiring a special expertise. It's whether the application and everything meets the requirement and guidelines. And the scoring is really, I think, pretty concise and to the point. So even though someone may, let's say, like for instance, I may not have development. Someone may have that, but that may not be what this scoring matrix is going to get into. It's
yeah,
the
but
scoring matrix that I think is going to really be our guide.
yes, that will be the cornerstone for our decision making. But
Yes.
a lot of times there's other things that come into play over and above the scoring. For example, somebody when it gets to our level, there may be something that we know about that applicant that is not a part of the scoring, which will help with the decision making.
Right. So,
There is a
again,
motion. So there is a motion on the floor that has been second, and we dealt with questions. I think we could actually vote yay and nay on what's on the floor, on the motion on the floor.
Can you lead us with an all in favor, Kirk?
yes, all in
And
favor?
I'm sorry, hold on 1 second, please. Can you clarify the motion, Reverend Grayson,
The
please?
motion was that we would move to have 3 persons on this scoring committee, Kirk being one of them, and URA and the vice board not being the part of the other 2. And that's the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain?
I
motion-
think I'm gonna abstain. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. The motion's approved.
Okay.
Thank you very much. So guys, what I would want to do now is, hold on, I'm gonna pull up, adjourn so we can go into our executive session. So do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Meeting is adjourned. You don't need a motion to close out.
No.
Thank you, guys.